Hello everybody, this is Word of Info, and today we're pleased to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary to Egypt, Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor of Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University, Samar Ibrahim is at the controls, I'm Najla Naguib, and we're with you until 5 o'clock, so stay with us.
Well, you can't turn him into a company man. You can't turn him into a whore. And the boys upstairs just don't understand that him they used to get for free. And there goes the last DJ.
Hello, back again. This is World of Info with His Excellency Ambassador Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary to Egypt, and Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor of Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University.
It's always great to have a chance to talk with such an important and experienced diplomat. His Excellency Ambassador Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary in Egypt, has been working here in Egypt for the past 7 years, and he's going on, hopefully, inshallah.
Hopefully.
Yes, and we are really very proud to have him every once in a while to tell us about his experience in Egypt, his experience in Hungary, and share with us not just information about Hungary or Egyptian-Hungarian relations, but definitely about his memoirs and memories in Egypt, which I believe you have to write a book in the end, and I know it will be published in the right time. No, I don't want you to publish it today, but promises that one day you will publish a book about living by the Nile in Egypt, in Cairo. Excellency, it's a great honor, and thank you very much for coming with us in this afternoon.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome.
Really, it's a great pleasure. When we talk about Hungary and how unique the Egyptian-Hungarian relations has been going on, we have to tell our listeners that Hungary is a country that really carries a lot of cultural heritage, a country that is so distinguished in the middle of Europe, and at the same time a country with a great history, and unfortunately in the 20th century great suffrage as well. We know that Hungary was a part of a union between the Austrian, or what they called the Austro-Hungarian Empire, that entered the First World War with a bigger piece of land and a bigger population, and unfortunately by the end of the First World War has lost a great deal of its land and of its property, and at the same time part of its population. Tell us about these hard times. I know, just as an introductory to our listeners, about this critical period of Hungary, sir.
Well, Hungary has the luck or the bad luck to be in a very strategic location, similarly like Egypt, and as a consequence, during history, during the last centuries, all the empires who were interested in this region tried to dominate, to control Hungary. For that reason, our history is full of such episodes when it came to defending our freedom or regaining our freedom, or fighting against invaders or revolutions and so on. Similarly to Egypt. This period of time, the First World War, was a particularly tragic part of our history, because, as you mentioned earlier, Hungary at that time was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. As such, the Hungarian leadership at that time tried to hold back the Austro-Hungarian monarchy until the very last moment from entering the First World War. We had famous politicians at that time whose statues you can find in Budapest today in front of the parliament, foreign minister Count Andrássy, and other politicians who did their really very, very best, because it was clear to them we cannot gain anything with this war, but we can lose a lot. And unfortunately, it happened. That alliance that Austria and Hungary were with lost the First World War, and unfortunately my country, Hungary, had to pay maybe the highest price among those who were in this alliance. Again, millions of Hungarian soldiers died for nothing, basically. They fought for interests which were not ours. For that reason, the 20th century had a very bad start for our nation. But after that, we had to deal with new realities. We had to find a way to accommodate ourselves with the given circumstances, and the governments at that time worked on how to survive, not only to survive, but how to establish, even if smaller, but a healthy and wealthy and well-educated nation that can deal with the challenges of the 20th century. And I think after a while of some years after the First World War, a time of consolidation came when the economy started recovering in the remaining country, when the Hungarian culture achieved new successes, when Hungarian sporting teams became successful. So step by step, the country achieved the level that it felt that it is the right one, and the economy gained momentum, and it seemed by the early 30s, mid 30s, I would say, or late 20s, that we managed to overcome the shock of the First World War.
But unfortunately, things don't go smoothly as we would like, because by the start of the 30s, there has been a sort of a coup, and there has been a lot of conflict that happened, and World War II was on the doors again. And I think after the break, we have to discuss the tragedy of World War II and its effect on a country that made this country afterwards, through this bitter experience, a stronger and a survival after the war of World War II.
Okay, so back again, World of Info with His Excellency Dr. Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary to Egypt, and Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor of Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University, talking about Hungary.
You've got such a pretty smile. It's a shame the things you hide behind it. Let 'em go, give it up for a while. Let 'em free, and we will both go find it. I know there's nowhere you can hide it. I know the feeling of alone. I know that you do not feel invited, but come back in from the cold. Step away then from the air. Your best friend in life is not your mirror. Back away, come 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 back away. I am here and I will be forever and ever. I know that there's nowhere you can hide it. I know the feeling of alone. Trust me and don't keep that on the inside. Soon you'll be locked out on your own. You're not alone. You're not alone. And don't say you've never been told. I'll be with you till we grow old, till I'm in the ground and I'm cold. I'm not enough, you're so grown. I'll be with you till we both gone. Like dawn, you can always come. Oh, dig up a bone, look around now, baby, now, nobody's gonna find out now.
So back again, word of info.
So we're talking with His Excellency the Ambassador Dr. Peter Kevek, the Hungarian ambassador in Cairo, and talking about the critical period of World War II. In World War II, again, Hungary was with its back against the wall, if we may use the expression, has been involved in World War II, again on the wrong side, forcibly. I mean, this was not with agreement. It was forced on it by the Axis, by Hitler or by the Nazis, that they have to be on their sides or they're going to be exterminated. And for the second time on the wrong side and crushed in World War II, with their troops unwillingly involved in losing war, in a losing cause, as you have eloquently shown us in the previous section, that it's a war that is with no benefits to Hungary. Again, in 20 years, less than 20 years. How could this happen? I mean, what is the interpretation of all that? Is it just because of the strategic site of the country, or the heritage, or the history, or it's a combination of everything?
Well, as I said, our geographic location was our bad luck in the 20th century. By the late 1930s, when Nazi Germany became stronger and stronger, and particularly after the Anschluss, when Nazi Germany occupied Austria, the German Empire became our direct neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, on the eastern side, we had another
rising empire, yes.
A rising empire, which was by no mean better than the Nazi Germany. That was the Soviet Empire.
Mm.
So our country,
with a shrewd leader, which is Stalin. I mean, he was
yes.
not. In comparison, both of them were dictators, and both of them were tough, and both of them were responsible.
Both
for
of them were mass murderers, and there is no difference really between the two. So our country by the late 30s became really in a critical situation. Our leaders at that time had the main agenda, the main issue to consider how the country could survive under such condition. How could we escape the German occupation, and how could we prevent the Soviet army to invade our country? So for that reason, Hungary was in a very delicate situation, and our politicians tried to prevent the worst, which was seen at that time, the German occupation. For that, there was no other choice but to try to find a way with Nazi Germany, and to make sure that the occupation doesn't happen. We managed to do that until spring 1944, but at a price that Hungarian troops had to go to war. Hundreds of thousands of Hungarian lives again were lost for no reason, for nothing, for a matter which was not ours.
Some of them are even buried in Al Alamein under the German flag.
That's
right.
true.
When I visited the
Yes.
German cemetery, and I found out that the Hungarian soldiers and officers are buried there as if they were part of the German Empire. Right, sir?
Yes, that's true.
Mm.
So when things started turning really worse, Hungary tried to leave the war. There were some secret negotiations with the Allied forces, but unfortunately the Germans learned about it, and in spring 1944 they occupied the country, which was really horrible because after that they started very bad things in Hungary.
So what happened to
deported
the Hungarian army that was engaged on the side of the Axis? Once the occupation happened, did they take them as prisoners of war, or what happened?
Some of them were taken as prisoners of war. Some others were forced to continue fighting, like military slaves. Many of them were executed. It was really a very sad story. And on the other hand, we saw the Soviet army approaching our country. So we were between two fires at that time. That was really a tragical situation, and it inflicted tremendous losses to our country once again within 1 century.
And we have found that a beautiful capital, which is the capital Budapest, city that really carries a lot of charm and beauty, a city that the Emperor of Austria himself felt jealous of its beauty and jealous of its own opera. We found that this city was almost demolished in the final months of the war, with great destruction, even the royal palace and the citadel. And I've seen myself the photographs of how this beautiful city was destroyed, and I look with great admiration of how the Hungarian people were able to restore brick by brick, if we may use the expression, this city again. How was that possible, in spite of the atrocities that happened later on? Because we know now that the communists or the Soviet Union has invaded Hungary and taken it as a part of its satellite states. How were the Hungarians able to convince the Soviets to rebuild the city and not to make it like the same style that the Soviets did in Germany or Eastern Germany, where they made the famous Stalin-like styles of buildings? How were they able to reconstruct the city in spite of all these adversaries?
Well, as you said rightly, Hungary paid a high price for the destructions of the Second World War. After the war was over, there was a feeling of national revival, because it was not obvious from the very beginning that we are going to be a part of the Soviet Empire and that we lost our sovereignty for the coming 45 years. So there was a huge enthusiasm in the Hungarian population. Those who survived, those who managed to get home from the lagers and from the prisoners of war camps on both on the Western or on the Soviet side. So for a couple of years there was really an atmosphere that of freedom, maybe for 2, 3, 4 years maximum, and it generated huge energies in the population. Within a couple of months, they managed to start at least rebuilding the remaining those buildings that were destroyed, and step by step it was really impressive how a national consensus was there that we have to rebuild our country as much as possible. After that, of course, the awakening was very bitter when in 1948-49 a very harsh Soviet style, Stalinian style dictatorship was established, and such things started happening, tragic things that Hungarians never experienced before, with again with concentration camps in our country, with deportations and so on. But this bad period of time, thanks to God, didn't hold longer than 1956, when the revolution came, and although the Soviets managed to get the country again under their control, but they decided to introduce a little bit, I would say,
Kinder communism.
kinder type of communism. That was the time by the let's say starting from the mid-60s, late 60s, when Hungary was becoming step by step, as they said it at that time, the funniest barrack in the Soviet lager.
So when we talk about this period in particular, we have to give a mention of 1956 and give great respect to the leader of the people, a man who is by the name of Nagay, if I'm pronouncing the name properly, the man who was able to see the needs of the people, to see their demands, and to obey the will of the people, and give the utmost sacrifice, which is his own life, keeping his word that he will try to guarantee a free Hungary. And unfortunately, he was, after the crushing of the revolution in October 1956, he paid the price with his own life. A man like this, with the famous statue that is on the bridge that I've seen in Budapest, reminds me of how he is really, his size is 1.5 the normal size of a human being. So this gives you an idea that he was out of this world, right?
That is true. Imre Nagy paid with his life for supporting the wish of the people, like many other fellow countrymen of him, of us, many other Hungarians. He was definitely a symbol of this revolution, but by far not the only one who did this. There were many others in the Hungarian army, among the workers, intellectuals, all those students, all those who said no, who dared to say no to this regime. And there were others. Imre Nagy was definitely a kind of spiritual leader of the events, but we should mention also another very important spiritual figure who became a symbol of the revolution, and that was Cardinal József Mindszenty.
I was just going to give a discussion about him, because really this man is admirable. He refused to give up, and he was the Archbishop almost of the whole of Hungary, and he was a prisoner inside, or he was self-exiled or self-imprisoned himself in the American embassy in Budapest. Not a very welcome guest in the American embassy, I believe. For almost 20 years he stayed there, right?
It is true. His life, his tragedy is parallel to the whole tragic history of Hungary's 20th century. He was in the late 40s, shortly after the Second World War. He was arrested by the communist police, and he had to suffer brutal tortures because he was a symbol of the Hungarian Catholic Church, which was very strongly opposed to not only as they were opposed to the Nazi dictatorship during the German occupation, they were opposed also to the Soviet occupation and the communist style dictatorship. That's why they thought if they managed to break the will of this man, the rest of the Hungarian church will obey. they didn't manage, although they did their best. They put him under really brutal pressure, but they couldn't break his will. They didn't sign anything, or he didn't say anything. He didn't admit anything what they wanted him to force him to do. And he was imprisoned, and for that and it was clear to the rest of the population what was going on. Him and many other priests and the monks and nuns from the Hungarian church had to share this fate with him. And when the revolution broke out, one of the first things were that the revolutionaries opened his prison, and he came out again, and through him, with him, the Hungarian church started breathing again freely, and it was really a tremendous momentum of the revolution. So, as we say, we can make a parallelity between him and Imre Nagy, on the one of them on the spiritual level, the other one on the political level, but they both of them expressed a part of the national soul, the national identity of the Hungarian nation, how we viewed, how we felt at that time.
So a great sacrifice with his own personal freedom. He stayed as a guest in exile in the American embassy for 20 years. He was released in the mid-70s, right, or something like that?
In the 1970s.
Yes, and then he was forced to be extradited out of the country, and he went to Rome, right? So
he was in exile after that in Vienna and in Rome, and but before he died, he said that he would like to be buried in Hungary only when the country will be free again. So for that reason, in the early 90s, one of the first acts of the first freely elected Hungarian government, when the country regained its sovereignty again in 1990, was to bury Cardinal József Mindszenty in the town of Esztergom, not far from Budapest, which is the heart of the Church of Hungary.
Yes, of course, the main Catholic church over there. So when we talk about this spiritual leader and the political leader, we have to tell our listeners that there was definitely light in the end of the tunnel. By the end of almost the start of the end of or the beginning of the end of the communism and of the Soviet Union, we see that Hungary was one of the first countries to regain its sovereignty in 1990. And with this freely elected, for the first elected government, we found that Hungary was able to march into the turbulent sea of democracy and of free economy without a safety net, yet it was able to survive. The country had the chance to survive and fared very well in spite of all the risks of drowning in such turbulent sea. How was that possible? And who should we attribute this to? Was it the people, the education of the people, the freedom, or the nature of the Hungarians in particular?
Well, I would say a combination of all those factors that you mentioned. But I have to underline that the road was not a straight one. There were ups and downs, and it is clear now from today's point of view that the first free elected Hungarian governments in the 90s, in the early 90s and mid 90s, committed some unfortunately serious mistakes that made the situation worse. For example, one of the main mistakes was that they exaggerated it with the economic liberalism. From today's point of view, we know that it is not possible that the government gives up all the control, completely the control about some strategic parts of the economy, like public utilities,
Railways,
railway, and so on, water supply, electricity supply, gas, and so on. At that time, it was not clear, and unfortunately, during the privatization, the wealth of the country was sold out too fast, and the result was that some international companies bought Hungarian factories just only to close them down, not to modernize them. They had enough production facilities in their own countries. They didn't need these factories, but they wanted to prevent them from recovery. They didn't want to have new competitors, and that's why in the early 90s many of such renowned famous companies whose names I don't want to mention here, but they inflicted a lot of problems to our economy, and it took years until the subsequent governments learned that this is not a way to deal with the challenges. So in the last couple of years, the current Hungarian government started making corrections on this path, and we have now a system which is of course a free market economy without any question, but with a certain control above some strategic parts of the economy, and some let's say directed development towards strengthening the I would say the industry and those parts of the economy that are really producing goods, not only services. So I would say after the regaining our freedom in the early 90s and making the liberalization of the economy step by step, and making unfortunately some mistakes, by now our country managed to find a very healthy balance in the economic policy that allowed us to stabilize, not only to stabilize the economic situation, but to come to a sustainable trajectory of growth, of healthy growth and balanced development, where there is a shared growth, when people can feel that they have more money in their pocket. They see positive changes in the country, new roads, new buildings, renovated buildings, and so on, which is, I mean, something which could have happened earlier if the governments at that time had known what is the right what was the right strategy after the collapse of communism. But better later than never. We are now on the right track, on the right path, and we are happy to have achieved this level.
Definitely, this is a very good way to summarize what happened in 20 years in 10 minutes. This is really admirable, sir. But after the break, we'll discuss more about the Egyptian-Hungarian relations.
Yes, back again, word of info with His Excellency Dr. Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary to Egypt, and Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor of Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University.
From Jerusalem, I walked a lonely mile in the moonlight. From the were shining. My heart was lost on a distant planet that whirls around the April moon, whirling in an arc of sadness. I'm lost without you. I'm lost without you. All my kingdoms turn to sand and fall into the sea. I'm mad about you. I'm mad about you. From the dark, secluded valleys, I heard the ancient songs of sadness. With every step I thought of you, every footstep only you, every star a grain of sand, the leavings of a dried up ocean. Tell me how much longer, how much longer? You see a city in the desert lies, the vanity of an ancient king. The city lies in broken pieces, where the wind howls and the vultures sing. These are the works of man. This is the sum of our ambition. You'll make a prison of my life if you became another's wife. With every prison blown to dust, my enemies walk free. I'm mad about you. I'm mad about you. I've never in my life felt more alone than I do now. Though I claim dominions over all I see, it means nothing to me. There are no victories in all our histories without love. A stone's throw from Jerusalem, I walked a lonely mile in the moonlight. 1 million stars were shining. My heart was lost on a distant planet that whirls around the April moon, whirling in an arc of sadness. I'm lost without you. I'm lost without you.
So back again, word of info with His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary to Egypt, and Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor of Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University.
Egyptian-Hungarian relations go far away, and there are very famous, distinguished Hungarians who worked in Egypt, lived in Egypt for quite a long time, and had a strong impact. One of the oldest people who lived in Egypt, in the late or the early 20th century, was the engineer, the famous architect Max Hertz, who was responsible for building a Rifai mosque, and he was involved in a lot of restorations in Islamic monuments in Cairo. And Count Almashi, or the English patient, or better known as Almaza, the one who founded the airport of Almaza. And he had everything. He was the aviator, he was the officer, he was the explorer, he was the geographist, he was considered to be a spy, he was a double agent, everything in the book, and suffered a lot after World War II and became a victim of tyranny of the communists. But he lived the final 2 or 3 years in Austria in exile. So Almaza, or Count Almashi, and of course the great and the famous Hidikoti. Right. So 3 famous names of Hungarians. Hidikoti, who trained the Ahli. Up till now, everybody remembers him in Egypt because he's the one who is the largest number of trophies for Ahli Club. Right.
Yes.
You have met the gentleman. He's now deceased, but have you met him before, sir, or you didn't have the chance?
Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to meet him, but of course, like every Hungarian, I know him from
his role as a player, as a famous player.
Yes,
in
that's right.
The golden age of the Hungarian football team.
That's true.
And of course, we have to give a mention to the Hungarian train, or the Magari, the train that was a very hard-working train between Cairo and Alexandria for almost 20 years. And let's talk about Egyptian-Hungarian relations. President Sisi, he knows everything about Hungary, and that's why he has chosen to travel to Hungary and meet with your Prime Minister and the President to discuss economic cooperation with a friendly country. Tell us about the visit, and let's talk also, we talked after the visit, but we want to talk about how these theories of cooperation are now going into practicality.
Well, it was as you said, extremely successful visit, not only in economic terms but also political terms, because the two leaders, Prime Minister Viktor Orban and President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, talked really the same language. There was a very clear understanding between the two statesmen, and it became clear that there is practically no difference between them in the way how to view some strategic issues, questions of world policy and the region and so on. So there has been a very good chemistry between the two leaders. When it comes to the follow-up of the visit, we are working on that. We have several projects in the pipeline. One of the most important, what you also mentioned, is the railway issue. It is on. We are working on that, and I hope we are now very close to finalizing the deal with Egypt. And let me tell you something. It's important to concentrate also on the future, but it's not possible to forget about the experiences of the past. I'm saying this also about this railway project, because as you said, throughout decades we saw these Hungarian trains on Egyptian rails. Millions of Egyptians were transported with them. That means these companies, Gons and Dunakeszi, they have excellent references for Egypt. And unfortunately, we saw some devastating railway accidents in Egypt in the last decades. But believe it or not, none of those accidents happened because of a technical failure of any spare part made in Hungary.
Yes, I'm sure of that.
So technically, it is number one for Egypt, I think, and I think it is time to resume this cooperation. We are ready. Our companies are ready. Large parts of the deal are done already. We just have to put the final touch on it, and I'm convinced that within a very short period of time we will succeed with this also. Other areas of cooperations are also there. When we are talking about cooperation, it's not only about trains or machines or whatever, but let us think also about the soft power of a country, which is the education.
We received a phone call from one of our listeners, Dr. Sharif, and he was asking about the cooperation in education. We know that, of course, a lot of Egyptians have made the travel during the 60s and early 70s to receive PhDs in different science prospects, whether this was chemistry, physics, mathematics, or agriculture, and they had a very superb training, and they came back to be professors. So it was like training of the trainers or educating the trainers. How can we fulfill another wave of cooperation?
And he was also asking about undergraduate education, university education.
Mm-hmm.
As well.
It's an excellent question. Let me congratulate Dr. Sharif on this question, because he hit exactly the core of what we are working on now. Well, indeed, we would like to revive this cooperation, and recently, last year, we signed an agreement between the two governments, giving the opportunity to 100 Egyptian students every year throughout 3 years, so altogether 300 Egyptian students, to come to Hungary for studies, fully fledged studies from the beginning till PhD, BA, MA, PhD, according to their choice, at a Hungarian university, majoring in that field, whatever they like. So we
Study
are
will be in Hungarian, of course.
not necessarily. It is possible to follow the studies in English as well. It is Hungarian universities have this opportunity also. They don't have to learn necessarily the Hungarian language. But it's an excellent opportunity because it is fully covered by the government of Hungary, and don't forget that the level of our education system is a very high one, maybe one of the highest in Europe. The best proof for that is that we are a country of just 10 million people, but we have 13 Nobel Prize winners among us from Hungary. And all of them, except for one, got their Nobel Prize in sciences. We have one for literature, and but the rest in sciences. So it shows the level and the quality of our education, and that's what we are offering our Egyptian friends to come to our country to take this opportunity for pursuing their studies there, and to become a bridge between our two countries, because we hope that after they know the quality of our education, they know the successes of our country, they will be able to facilitate the cooperation between the two countries. For that reason, I would like to see many students, for example, of railway engineering at Hungarian universities. We have excellent opportunities for that, but also such fields like water management or whatever they like.
There was a wave of medical students that went in the 80s. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, yes, sure.
Hungary. One of them was my cousin who went to study his medicine in Hungary. For sometimes this was a sort of a mecca for younger students who wanted to join medical school and to have a decent education with a reasonable pricing, right?
Indeed.
Yes.
That is true. In the 80s, it was like this. In the 1970s, 1980s. Not only with Egypt, but with this part of the world. Let me share with you an interesting story that happened to me just recently. Besides Egypt, I'm covering other countries also from Cairo, like Sudan. And about a fortnight ago, I traveled to Sudan, also outside of Khartoum to North Darfur, because one of the Hungarian companies managed to finalize their solar power project, a very promising one. When we arrived in El Fashir, in the capital of North Darfur, the delegation of the local government received us, and all of a sudden I saw a Sudanese gentleman who turned out to be the Minister of Health, talking to me in fluent Hungarian language, greeting me. And I learned from him that he graduated from the Medical University of Pécs in 1978, and he still remembers our country very well. So it is really a very good investment.
He acts like an ambassador at large for Hungary in Sudan. This is
indeed.
Mm.
Really in such unexpected situations, and this is really an investment into the future for us to build friendship like this. But I could mention you examples like this also from Egypt a lot. So for that reason, the government of Hungary decided recently to revive this honorable traditions and to invite students from these countries to Hungary in the hope that we will both sides will enjoy the advantages of this friendly cooperation again soon.
Yes. After a break, we have to finalize things, but definitely we want to talk more and finalize our talk, which really wanted to be more extended, and you promise us to come again, right?
Absolutely.
get now. Black of peas came to make it hot. We beat the fire.
So time is flying, and we have to leave our dear guest, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary in Egypt. And just final talk about Hungary. We really are proud of our strong relation, or fraternal relation that went on for the past 70 or 80 years. As far as I know, that it has been since the declaration of Egyptian independence in 1923 that Egypt has had a continuous, or more or less continuous, relations between Egypt and Hungary for such a long time. With Count Al-Mashi, with the railways, with the trains, with Hidikoti, and with more people on the Nile and in Hungary. Give us your final thoughts about this strong relation, please.
Well, I would like to see more Egyptian friends coming to Hungary also. We have in a year tens of thousands of Hungarians visiting the Red Sea resorts and other parts of Egypt.
You didn't forbid any Hungarians from visiting Egypt, right?
No, Hungary has never said that Egypt would be a dangerous country, whatever, except for the northeast Sinai, El Arish, and that area. All the Hungarian tourists are allowed to visit this great country, and we don't make any obstacle to that.
Good.
But I would like to see more Egyptian tourists also discovering the beauties of Hungary. For example, in medical tourism, health tourism, spas,
Thermal water, beautiful thermal
water. It is really amazing, and it is scientifically proven that the chemical composition of thermal water in Hungary is one of the best in the world. It is because of the geological situation of our country, and it is located in the middle of the Carpathian basin, the Carpathian Mountains. So in the earth we can find good thermal water. If you want to find any better, you have to go either to New Zealand, which is very far away, or to Iceland, which is
So
very
cold.
very cold. But Hungary comes immediately after that, quality-wise number one in Europe. So please come and enjoy it and discover our beautiful country.
Definitely would love to do that, and definitely we have enjoyed your company, Your Excellency. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Every time you come, you brings us a lot of hopes and friendship and a lot of things as well.
Yes. And by this we come to the end of Word of Info with His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Peter Kevek, Ambassador of Hungary to Egypt, Dr. Amr Mabrouk, Professor of Plastic Surgery at Ain Shams University. Samar Ibrahim was at the controls of Najla Naguib. See you next Thursday, same time, same station, FM 95.4.
Hey, brother, there's an endless road to rediscover. Hey, sister, know the water's sweet, but blood is thicker. Oh, if the sky comes falling down for you, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do.